Hey everyone, ready to explore some art.
Always. Who are we looking at today?
Today it's Jean Dubuffet
Oh, interesting.
and SLART. Both of these guys really kind of shook things up in the art world.
Yeah, in their own ways, for sure.
Yeah, and they both came to art a little later in life.
That's right. It's fascinating, isn't it? You have Dubuffet, this huge figure in 20th century art known for, well, embracing Art Brut.
Right.
And then you have Slart, a contemporary artist, really making waves with this bold, raw energy. Two very different points in our history, but connected by this shared thread of challenging conventions.
Yeah. And speaking of unconventional, SLART's background is, well, it's not what you typically expect from a visual artist.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, his online CV is pretty wild. The guy was optimizing Dyson websites for years
Mm.
and running email campaigns before he started painting seriously in 2019.
Wow, that's a heck of a leap. From the meticulous world of digital marketing to the raw, expressive canvases he's creating now. It's almost like, well, like he's rebelling against the very world he came from.
And his art titles kind of hint at that rebellious spirit, too. Not today, don't tell me what to do.
Oh, yeah.
There's this real sense of defiance there. It's like he's pushing back against all the expectations, of the digital age. That world can feel pretty sterile and controlling sometimes, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah.
It makes you think.
It does, though with Slarnin, it's not just about rebelling. There's vulnerability in his work, too,
Yeah.
particularly in pieces like Bloodlines and Kidney Man,
Right?
where he's exploring, well, his own experiences with chronic kidney disease.
That's powerful stuff.
It is that rawness, that emotional honesty. It really resonates with the principles of Art Brut that Dubuffet championed all those decades ago.
Okay, so for those who might not be familiar, could you give us a little more context on Art Brut? What exactly is it, and why was it so groundbreaking at the time?
Sure. So Art Brut, which is often translated as raw art, refers to art created outside the traditional confines of the art world.
Mhm.
So think of artists working without formal training, really driven by this pure, unfiltered expression,
Right.
often using unconventional materials.
Like Dubuffet, who famously incorporated things like mud and sand, even tar, into his paintings.
Exactly. That's a great example.
I bet that raised a few eyebrows in the art world back then.
Oh, absolutely. Just picture it, the polished galleries of post-war Europe, everyone's striving for, this sense of order and restoration. And then you have Dubuffet splattering mud on canvases, creating these thick, textured surfaces that were anything but refined.
And the critics.
They weren't fans. He was accused of anarchy, of scraping the dustbin. It was quite a stir.
But there was a method to his madness, right? It wasn't just about shock value.
Absolutely not. Dubuffet's use of these unconventional materials was a very deliberate rejection of the prevailing aesthetic of the time. It was a challenge to the idea that art had to be, I don't know, beautiful in this traditional sense.
Mm.
He saw beauty in the everyday, in the discarded, in the raw, in the unexpected. It was a radical departure from the norm. And, it really paved the way for a whole new way of thinking about art.
So even though he initially studied art in a traditional setting,
Mm-hmm.
he ultimately chose to break free from those constraints.
Yes.
Kind of like SLART, moving from that structured world of digital marketing to this much more expressive form of art making.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Both artists had these established lives, almost like they were living double lives,
Right.
before finally embracing their true artistic callings.
And in Dubuffet's case, that rebellious spirit wasn't just about the materials he used, it was about the subjects he chose to depict as well. He had this whole series of portraits featuring writers and intellectuals.
Right.
But instead of painting them in a traditional flattering style,
Mm-hmm.
he captured them in this raw, almost grotesque way.
He did. He wanted to, I don't know, expose that inner world, the complexities of human nature, not just the polished facade.
I see.
His portraits, they weren't about beauty. They were about truth,
Truth.
about capturing the essence of a person. He once said, how did it go? He wanted to make portraits that were like X-rays, revealing the soul beneath the surface.
That's an interesting way to put it.
It is.
And that kind of brings us back to SLART, who also uses portraiture,
He does.
but with this fascinating pop culture twist.
Yes. His painting, Fighting with Mr. T,
Yeah.
is a prime example. He's grappling with these themes of male insecurity and how we idolize these larger-than-life figures from our childhoods.
You're like,
It's deeply personal, but also speaks to this broader cultural obsession with I don't know, celebrity and masculinity.
So both artists are using portraiture to explore these really complex psychological themes, but through completely different lenses.
Right.
Makes you wonder what would happen if you put those two artistic minds together.
Now that's a collaboration I'd love to see. Can you imagine it? Dubuffet with his, with his love of texture and all those unconventional materials, meeting Slart with his bold colors and that graphic sensibility. It could be an explosive combination.
I'm trying to picture, I'm seeing Dubuffet grabbing some of that mud, that mud he loved,
Oh, yeah.
layering it onto the canvas, creating these rough, almost primal textures. And then Slart comes in, all bold graphic lines, adding this layer of contemporary angst, maybe even incorporating some digital elements.
Oh, now that's a thought. Would they embrace technology or stick to those more traditional tactile methods?
Right.
And what about the subjects? You have Dubuffet with his focus on, on the human condition,
Right.
that inner world. And then you have Slart with his exploration of, I don't know, pop culture icons and those modern anxieties. It's an interesting clash.
Would we see those distorted, almost grotesque figures that Dubuffet was known for emerge from the canvas,
Yeah.
but infused with, with Slart's vibrant colors and
Yeah.
that graphic style?
Right.
Would they create a portrait of, I don't know, a contemporary celebrity, but rendered in mud and sand, challenging our notions of beauty and fame?
Who knows? The possibilities are, well, they're endless, really. But I do think at its core, this hypothetical collaboration would be about more than just aesthetics. It'd be a dialogue between two artists who, despite their differences in time and their approach, shared this deep-seated urge to challenge conventions, to explore the complexities of the human experience.
Yeah. And speaking of challenging conventions, we can't talk about Dubuffet without mentioning his fascination with art created by people outside the mainstream art world, particularly those living with mental illness. His book, Bildnerei der Geisteskranken, which, well, it showcased art by psychiatric patients,
Oh, yeah.
was hugely controversial at the time.
It was. It was a radical move publishing a book like that back then in 1926. He was essentially saying, look, there's this whole world of creativity that we're ignoring because it doesn't fit our, I don't know, narrow definition of what art should be. He saw beauty and authenticity in these works, a kind of unfiltered expression that he felt was missing from the established art world.
And that fed directly into his Art Brut philosophy, right?
Right.
The idea that true art comes from a place of raw emotion, unburdened by those academic constraints or societal expectations.
Precisely. And it's interesting to consider Slart's work in this context, even though he comes from a completely different background. I mean, the corporate world, not the psychiatric wards that fascinated Dubuffet.
Right.
There's a similar sense of rawness, of emotional honesty that connects them. He's also working outside the traditional art system, forging his own path, and his art is deeply personal, often drawing on his own struggles with chronic illness.
It makes you wonder, what would Dubuffet have thought of Slart's work? Would he have, would he have recognized a kindred spirit and another artist pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo?
I think he would have been intrigued, definitely. He might have seen in Slart a reflection of how that concept outsider art has evolved over time. In Dubuffet's era, it was about, those individuals creating art on the fringes of society, often marginalized and overlooked. But today, with the rise of the digital age, we're all in a sense becoming outsiders, struggling to find our authentic voices amidst all the noise and the pressure to conform.
So Slart's art, with its bold, defiant spirit, might be seen as a contemporary manifestation of those same outsider impulses that Dubuffet championed, well, all those years ago.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's what makes both of these artists so relevant today. They remind us that art can be a powerful tool for expressing those personal and, those cultural tensions we all experience. They challenge us to question our assumptions about what art can be, who can be an artist, how art can reflect the complexities of the human experience.
And the fact that both Dubuffet and Slart came to art a bit later in life, that adds another layer to this whole outsider narrative, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like they were both, living these other lives, pursuing different careers before realizing their true calling. Dubuffet even owned a wine business for a while.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine going from selling wine to revolutionizing the art world.
That's what's so inspiring about their stories, isn't it? They remind us that artistic journeys, they're rarely linear. There's no one right path to becoming an artist. It can happen at any age, from any background. And sometimes, well, sometimes that unconventional path is what gives an artist their, their unique perspective, their edge.
Like they're saying, hey, you don't have to fit into any mold. You can find your own way, even if it takes a while.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder about all those people out there,
Hmm.
Maybe they have this hidden artistic passion, that creative spark just waiting to be ignited.
Right.
Maybe they're, I don't know, stuck in a job they hate.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just afraid to take that leap of faith.
It's never too late to find your artistic voice. Dubuffet and SLART, I mean, they're proof of that. They both had these completely different careers,
Yeah.
before finding their way to art. And think about it, those experiences, those other lives they lived, they probably informed their artistic perspectives in ways I don't know, in ways they couldn't have imagined back then.
So what does all this mean for you, our listener? Why should they care about these two artists?
Ah.
Separated by time, but united by this shared spirit of rebellion and raw, unfiltered expression.
Well, I think Dubuffet and SLART, they offer us a new way of seeing the world, a new way of questioning the things we take for granted.
Yeah.
They encourage us to embrace the unconventional, the unexpected, to find beauty in the imperfections.
They remind us that there are no boundaries to creativity, no age limits, no right or wrong way to make art. And maybe most importantly, they show us that it's okay to be different, to stand out from the crowd, to embrace our own unique perspectives, even if it takes us a while to get there.
Yeah. They challenge us to look beyond the surface, to dig deeper, to question what we think we know about art and the world around us.
So go out there and explore their work. See what resonates with you. Let their art spark your own creative journey, your own exploration of the world. Who knows? Maybe you'll even be inspired to create something yourself. Maybe there's a hidden artist inside you just waiting to break free.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those creative sparks flying.
And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to Dubuffet and SLART's work.
Yes, we'll have links to their websites, some articles, and even some videos so you can really dive deep into their art.
Definitely worth checking out.
It's been a blast exploring these art world outsiders with you.
It has.
Thanks for joining us.